Hi, hello everyone. Yes, once again, welcome everyone to the fifth webinar. And my name is Matthew Tang. I'm from IATA, the Senior Manager, E-commerce and Cargo Operations. And I'm also the Secretary of the IATA Airmail Board, the Co-Secretary of the IATA-UPU Contact Committee. So today we have 5 speakers and also we have colleague from UPU, Jan. So Jan and I will do the opening section and we will have the experience sharing from 5 different speakers. They are from the carrier side, from the IATA board, also the postal office from the UPU side. And at the end of the webinar, we will have the representative Clement from EU Digitaxu to talk about the transit and transshipment scenario, implementation plan, waiting schedule. So happy for we have now 182 people in this webinar, so it's a huge number here. And before starting the webinar, we need to remind everyone here that we are governed by the IATA competition or guidance guidelines. Yeah. So every the contents related to the business sensitive information and also your we need to avoid talking about that and the prohibited agreements and activities. So this information and the slide after this webinar will be included in our IATA website and also UPU website. As mentioned, we have 5 speakers for today, and we are happy to have Christophe from La Poste France. We have Natalia from Swiss International Airlines. We have Stephanie from United Airlines. We have Carlos from Brazil Post, and we have Clement from EU Commission. So in the beginning, we have some welcome and opening section. And after that, we will have 2 speakers from carrier. One is the EU ICS2 carrier, Swiss Air, and then followed by will be non-EU ICS2 carrier, United Airlines. And both carriers are members of our IATA Airmail board. And then we will have the La Poste France and also Brazil Post. They are the EU and non-EU ICS2 postal operators. So at the end, we will have Clement talking about the phasing enforcement, and then we will have the closing section. So during the webinar, if you have any questions or comments you want to raise, please type it in the Q&A room, and we will try our best to answer the question and give feedback. And we will also allow some time in the closing section in order to give the floor to the speakers again to respond to some of the questions. So before moving on, may I also introduce my colleague from UPU, Jan, to say a few things and do the openings. So Jan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. I'm very happy to see that we have today again a few hundreds of people interested in this webinar. This is our 5th webinar, joint IATA-UPU webinar, and I hope that you will be you will get information you are asking for or you are waiting for, and you will appreciate and evaluate this workshop or webinar the same as before. On my first slide, I mentioned that during the based on the previous workshop assessment, we recognize that 96% of participants evaluated first webinar as a very good or good. Most of the participants participated in more webinars, minimum in 2 or 3 webinars. And I hope that we will be able to continue in this successful joint cooperation with IATA to give as many information as possible to all supply chain stakeholders, to carriers, to designated operators, to customs, handling agents, IT suppliers, and so on. The main focus of this webinar is on the electronic advanced data or implementation status regarding the ICS2. Because ICS2 region or European Union plus Switzerland and Norway is the first region implementing full we can speak global postal model or EAD model, and I'm very happy that we have such interesting speakers for today, as Matthew already presented. I'd like to let you know that this webinar is not forum to speak about the details of processes, protocols. This is just for sharing of information. We have many other platforms in which we can discuss in more details some protocols, processes, or other issues. I would like to say that, please go back for a second more. I'd like to say that we are happy to see that thanks also these webinars and join IATA-UPU contact committee activities, we have still more and more carriers posts ready for EAD. We are also happy to see more and more carriers participating in free of charge compliance project to see not only data exchange but also quality of this data exchange. And I am really very happy to confirm that during the last few months we have regular bi-weekly meetings, including IATA-UPU contact committee co-chairs, taking care about the situation, really ready to help all posts or carriers asking for a help or clarification. We are also continuing in our legal framework changes based on the discussion in the IATA-UPU contact committee or other forums. And we created also a EAD risk management team in the International Bureau of UPU, so anybody can ask with any request. And we are really dealing with many requests regarding late assessment complete messages, missing IMPC codes addresses, referral ID change, missing ages codes, or those issues which maybe you speakers will mention today, or you are facing and you would need help. Do not hesitate to contact us. We did a lot of good job, and on the next slide you can see a progress of readiness of designated operators or posts and carriers be EAD capable. You can see that, for example, last month we had already 187 member countries or designated operators exchanging carded messages with carriers. We increased the number of posts sending AR flag, which is important for confirmation that risk assessment was completed. Through AR flag, we have 145 countries like that. We are working also to improve the compliance of the reports. So there is a progress for sure. On the next slide, I can show you also that we are monitoring, thanks to data from IPC, the timing, response time. It means time between sending information from origin country, ITMAT messages, to destination customs in European Union, and waiting for a feedback, waiting for RFI, RFS, or assessment complete messages. These times are improving. We are constantly monitoring this progress, but there are still some issues, and I must say that these figures are global figures. It's average from all EU countries, but the quality or timing is different country by country. We have some countries providing assessment complete message on 99% within 2 hours. We have some countries providing most of the or referrals after 12 hours. So it's country by country different, but in general, I can say that the trend is very positive and it's improving. On the next 2 slides, I am presenting very shortly that the list of countries or member states of UPU providing carded messages, and in bold you can see countries providing also AR flag. And on the next slide, we have also a list of carriers exchanging carded resident messages with post in September of this year. We doubled number of carriers providing carded resident exchange with post during the last 1.5 years. So we can see that there is a huge progress, visible progress, and but it doesn't mean that we are fully ready. I would like to say that even if the main great progress was made, there is still there are still some issues, and that's the reason why I'd like to appreciate a pragmatic decision of European Commission that for mail in transit via European Union or transshipped via EU, deadlines for implementation of ICS2 Release 2 were postponed for several months. More details will be provided, I'm sure, by Clement later today. I'm sure that this decision will help us to prepare carriers and designated operators and IT solutions be ready also for those requirements. At this moment, only mail to European Union is fully implemented, or ICS2 Release 2 for mail to EU destination is fully implemented. And even if there are still some challenges, I must thank to all supply chain stakeholders for their support, their effort, and it helped us to continue in mail flow also after implementation of this first region of the EAD. Thank you very much, Matthew. I think that's all from my side at this moment. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Jan. Then let's follow the agenda today. So, for all the speakers, and I have the master slide here. I can do the presentation, or if you want to take control, let me know. I will give the floor to you. So, let's go to the first speaker, Natalia. So, do you want me to share your screen, or you want to do it by yourself? Let me do.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. You can
Okay.
share it. I mean. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Natalia Luscher. I'm working for Swiss Road Cargo in the cargo offer development team. So responsible also for the product mail management and related processes management. So I was very much involved in the ICS2, and thank you very much again for the possibility to share our experience in such a big a platform as IATA-UPU webinar. So you can move to the next slide, Matthew. Thank you. So our overall readiness, basically we are fully compliant as from 2nd of October. Of course, I mean, transshipments and mail in transit is still under question, but all the mail that is coming to Switzerland or any other country in the EU is basically and transported with us is fully compliant. Next slide. So and here is basically our path and the roadmap that we had when we started to look into the ICS2 implementation very closely. So first of all, we had a kind of preparation phase. So we had to identify where we have gaps. So where are our customers having gaps or needed some support? Also, what are the gaps in our own processes? And also the big question also was about the mail scanning, because that was one of the key requirements for the station to be ICS2 compliant. So on the 1st of July, we had, so we decided to do a step-by-step implementation of the ICS2. So we started 1st of July, where we turned off a check of the carded availability from the non-EU stations and customers. So that was introduced on 1st of July. Of course, before we did that, we talked to all the customers who didn't have a let's say 100% of the carded penetration in order to understand where we can help them. So then the second step implementation was on the 20th of September, where we went station by station again, reviewing the same information as we did in the preparation phase, and we took a decision to start a partial air flag check, and basically that went also very smoothly. So most of our postal operators were already by then compliant with those requirements. And then as from 2nd of October, we implemented it in all the non-EU stations. So we are fully compliant. So what, of course, the work didn't stop on 2nd of October. What we still do is we do monitoring and fixing. So we have some issues here and there. They're not big, so just small things that we have still to adjust and fix. And in most of the cases, this is a change management where we have to teach and repeat again how things should be done. So this is basically our main tasks for now. If you can move to the next slide, Matthew. Okay, and here basically to give you a little bit an idea how it looked like before 1st of July and after 1st of July. So this is basically a scanning availability, and you can see a number of stations in the region with the scanning and without. So the before of July, the most problem was in Americas region. I mean, this is a region definitions that is done by Swiss. So where we had a couple of stations where didn't have scanning, and EMEA includes then Africa and Europe, Africa, Middle East, where we also had a couple of stations to work on. And as you can see, after 1st of July, basically we had reached everywhere 100% of scanning. So that was basically the goal. So it was reached, required a lot of efforts from our side, of course, and from our colleagues out there, but it was completed. And next slide. And here you can see also how the carded and air flag availability developed through the time. So here I just took 2 months to show you how the difference is, and or was basically in June when we still didn't start even with the first phase implementation, 1st of July. So the Asia Pacific region looked very good from the beginning, but we had a lot of things to do with Americas and EMEA regions, and there we worked very closely with our customers, so the postal operators, and I really appreciate this work and the availability and the support basically that was provided to us, or asked from our side. So we really had a great cooperation in this regard, and you can see as well that the picture in September looked completely different. So basically, I would say that the goal was achieved, and it looked very good. And I mean, this is what Jan also showed in his slides, that improvement are there, and they are quite significant. So if we go to the next slide. So, and yeah, what are the issues that we were facing, or we are still facing? I mentioned a couple of them, but just to summarize them a little bit. If you move to the next one. Okay. So, of course, I mean, we are monitoring very closely that everything is working, and we have to be compliant with the ICS2 requirement as a carrier, of course. So, and the main issues basically are or were, so there are issues handling related. So basically, we still have errors where the handling process doesn't work as it it has to work. So we know where it is happening, and we are really working close with those handling agents in order to train them or retrain them or remind or maybe clarify some open questions. So in order to really reach 100% or close to 100% adherence to the ICS2 process from the handling side. Then we also have or had as well some system bugs or failures that of course required a quick fixing. So yeah, our service provider is well notified, and we are working very closely in for these topics as well. Then, as I already mentioned, so the change management in general. So yes, we spend now a lot of energy and resources in reminders, in trainings or retrainings, and all the monitoring tasks, which of course sometimes could be a bit disappointing that you have to remind things many times, but this is also a part of the job and part of the whole journey. So basically, we are facing issues as well there where we have to remind the same thing many times. And data quality, of course, so where we receive ongoing incomplete cardits, and then of course there are problems then afterwards with the customs filing. So these are basically the main blocks where we experience some issues. If you move to the next slide, Matthew. So, and where would we need support? So the next slide, please. So, I mean, there are, I could identify just three main topics where we would need support. I truly believe that a regular exchange between the carrier and the postal operator is a key in the whole ICS2 topic, so that I think that where it is not established yet, we have to do so, and we have to discuss issues if there are any, and also define the way together how we can solve them. Also, and this is more related to the handling part. So, how can we all together train our handling agents or ground handlers to adhere to the defined process, and to make sure that they understand that this is important. And yeah, here we have to talk worldwide. Yeah, so this is a kind of a big topic and a big task. And improve data quality. So yes, we need also to make sure that all the cardits are correctly completed, and they also have all the information required included in order to for us to make a correct customs filing. So there would UPU, I mean, we already in a close cooperation with Jan, so and they are helping a lot. So we will continue to work on this together as well. So basically, I think that was more or less the last slide, right, Matthew? If you, next steps. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, as I already mentioned, we now continue with the support, basically for all the stakeholders. So we have a postal operator where we still in a very close contact, really providing support to them where we can, of course, sometimes teaching, training. We are also in this support with our outstations and the handling agents, and we will continue to do so. We will continue to monitor the issues that are popping up here and there, and also we'll fix them as soon as possible. And of course, the whole topic of repeating, reminding, retraining, and so on, that would be, I think, still on our tables for the next couple of months for sure. So this is basically it, and I mean, this is the contact information. If somebody wants to ask question, you are more than welcome. And again, thank you very much for your attention and your time.
Thank you very much for Natalia and share her story from an EU ICS2 carrier. So after listening to the story from an EU ICS2 carrier, and the next one will be a non-EU ICS2 carrier from United States. So Stephanie, so if you want me to take control for you, or you will do your presentation by yourself.
Matthew, you can control it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Stephanie Giraldi. I'm the Senior Manager for Postal Network Optimization and Performance for United Airlines. So thank you for the opportunity, Matthew, Jan, for the opportunity really to talk about United's experience overall as we worked through being compliant with ICS2 Release 2. So we are ready. We are compliant as of October 2nd. As Natalia mentioned, with the exception of the transshipments, however, we are following current guidance there. We did spend a lot of time with our IT service provider throughout this process. Descartes really was a great partner, and their expertise really did help us through this process. I'll go through briefly the timeline. In January of 2022, I actually took this position with United. So I didn't have some of the background information that some of my colleagues did. So I really did just begin, preparing to understand the requirements. And then the remainder of 2022 just continued to work with Descartes and our United internal scanning team to make sure we did identify those gaps and what we needed to do to become compliant. So in early 2023, we did then communicate with our customers on the requirements. And then into July, we did identify any IT issues and resolve those, as well as completing our safety risk analysis with our operations teams and our corporate teams. And then in August of 2023, we did put into place our scanner enhancements, which were then able to identify the CARDITs and the AR flag for compliance. And then September of 2023, we did begin training of our frontline agents. I'll talk about that a little bit later, just in terms of our inability really to start that up until September with some of the changes that were still occurring. And then full implementation in October of 2023. So next slide, Matthew. So really around customer readiness, we really needed to make sure we had two things to be compliant, which was, the mail, number one, being consigned, right, and the timing of the CARDIT messages. So we pay particular attention to those two areas. For unconsigned mail, before ICS2, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of visibility around whether or not we were taking mail that was consigned or unconsigned. So this actually allowed us to put in a scanner enhancement that would identify and give us some visibility around that. So we are now looking at the CARDIT validation process and making sure that all mail that we take is considered consigned, not only for mail traveling into the EU, but for all of our mail that we're accepting. The Post also seemed to recognize the increased need to provide the card for all consignments. So we did see a 60% reduction in unconsigned mail in September 2023 compared to June, as you can see, which was really great news for us, right? If it's not consigned, then we're not going to have the card to validate against. Next slide, Matthew, please. And then the other thing we were really looking at is, which posts, right, were giving us consigned versus unconsigned mail. So despite the overall decrease, it still does vary by post. And that's why we're really relying on our scanner enhancement so that we do prevent the risk of carrying unconsigned mail. So all consigned mail is now being rejected by United at origin. However, we are working very closely with our posts to make sure that we continue to see some increased compliance there. This is just a small sampling of some of the posts that have stayed a little bit status quo or have shown some great improvement overall. So we continue to work on that as well. Next slide, Matthew. Also, as I mentioned, right, the carded timings were very important to us. Some cardeds were not being received until after the mail was being accepted at our warehouses. And if we didn't have the messaging at acceptance, then we also didn't have, obviously, the AR flag check. So the below is really just an example from our Chicago warehouse from June 2023, which is the top chart, compared to September of 2023. So as you can see, in June, we had, quite a few that were on time, but we also had some messages that came in a day late or even much later than that. So the bottom picture there, you'll see the improvement just from one of our main stations in regards to carded timing. So that has been a success story as well for us. Next slide, Matthew. So really, I'll go into the challenges and observations, and we just really had to work through a lot of these. It was very fluid in terms of what we were hearing, what we were being provided, and being able to really adapt real time. So system updates and data quality. We really worked well with our platform provider, as well as our internal scanning application team, to ensure that all mail had a carded message available, as well as the AR flag when that was applicable. The security filing evolution from cargo to mail really did not take into consideration the criticality of some of the underlying data availability and maintenance requirements. So there, in the beginning, really, there was an incomplete understanding of what was needed from the Post and what they were going to be able to realistically provide and when. So we had to work really closely with the Post to better understand that. The UPU code list 108D was not updated initially for accurate and complete sender receiver addresses. So thank you, Jan, to the UPU team for helping us with that piece. And then the UPU applicable regulation identifiers were not always clear. We've come a long way, since we've had some of these, challenges. So a lot of these have been resolved or continuing to be resolved. Consignment data issues, they've primarily been addressed, but some do continue, which is the timing and availability of the consignment data at the time of tender to United. And then we do still have some situations with Post where the airline segment to identify the airline for transport is not identified for filing. So those, unfortunately, right now are still being refused at acceptance, returned, and then retendered with the correct airline. Military exemptions, as we know, were not announced until after our scanning enhancements were in place. So once our scanning enhancements went into place, we were unable really to pivot at that late date to now allow that within our scanner enhancements. We also did see some challenges with letter class identification. So some posts are not, consistently consigning the appropriate class based on the UPU guidelines, letter versus parcel. And then really, like I mentioned, the changing deadlines just made it difficult as we had to pivot, halfway through with IT requirements. And as many of you know, probably working with IT on our United side, not always flexible in timing, right? I mean, to put in a scanner enhancement, it takes months to get those deployed. And then I just showed a couple of scanner enhancements on our mail scanning application, where we do receive alerts if a carded is not received at time of tender, or the customs is not cleared, i.e. the AR flag at time of tender. Next slide, Matthew. And then just some additional challenges and observations from a handling perspective. Again, just the timing of the carded messages being received did require the additional enhancements. The ongoing need for the manual process. I think there's still a little bit of confusion here just with the physical form 302 for military mail. We United don't really have a current process. So I guess something maybe to continue to discuss, could this be communicated via carded message, or at least that it exists at some point. And then some posts were not aware that Switzerland and Norway required the AR flag until near implementation date. In terms of communication, initially, like I said, some of these challenges have been resolved, but lack of communication from the EU, as well as transparency or ownership from the posts. Some variations between EU customs, communicated requirements, and local countries' customs expectations were a bit different. And then really just the uncertainty around the penalty process if any of the polls do not include the required data in the carded message. We didn't know right as of July 1 how that was really gonna work. And then we were at times, from a United perspective, not aligned with some of the EU discussions, as a lot of the participants during some of the IATA-UPU contact committee meetings, the topics were really export oriented, when United was more focused on the import. And then training and implementation, just really due to the constant changing on timelines. Also in regards to if military would receive a waiver, the training on the new procedures was a little bit difficult for our frontline agents. We really didn't want to train them until we had full transparency of scope, which with it being delayed a few different times and some of the scope changing, we had to pivot and train much closer to the October 2nd implementation date. Next slide, Matthew. And then really just expectations for success. Natalia mentioned this a little bit too, but just really the timely and accurate exchange of information. We continue to work with the posts that, are giving us, mail prior to the exchange of information. And that has, definitely come a long way. And we have a lot more visibility around that now as well. And then really just the post to follow the process when it comes to late referrals so that the appropriate action can be taken. We received 0 late referrals so far, but based on the opening comments by Jan, it looks like that is, really just few and far between. So that makes me feel better that we're in that same bucket, and it's just not for the fact that we're not receiving any late referrals from the posts. And then just we'll continue to monitor for data quality and the postal airway bill filing for customs clearance through the global security filing system. And then just continuing to identify gaps in handling for our frontline agent, continuing to make observations and retraining on that as needed. And then just one other comment that I had updated in my slide, Matthew, but I don't think you have, is really just the transshipments, continuing to work with our IT service provider on that. I know there's a lot more conversation to be had there, and we really need to ensure that the origin posts are ready for that in sending the appropriate ITMAT to the destination customs for clearance. And then I think the last slide is just thank you for the opportunity to present our experience as we work through this process and this journey.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephanie. Especially at the end of the presentation, touch on the transshipment scenario. And now we have finished the story from the carrier side. And let's look at the story from postal operators. And the next speaker will be Christophe from La Poste, France. And Christophe, do you want me to take control, or you would like to do the presentation by yourself?
Thank you very much, Matthew. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think that Jan is willing to take the floor. He has raised his hand.
Yes, I was asking for a floor because I didn't want whether we want to give a floor also for some questions or comments based on presentation from Swiss and United, or whether we will give a floor to participants to raise some questions or comments after all presentations.
We will do it after all the presentation and just leave the comment and question in the Q&A.
Okay.
So, Christoph, you want me to take control for the
Yes.
presentation? Yeah,
Please
okay, so
take
the
the
floor is
control.
yours.
Thank you very much, Matthew. So I am Christophe Pereira, the Customs and International Supply Chain Manager at La Poste Group, which is a French postal operator. I would like first to thank IATA and UPU for giving me the opportunity to present this topic, very important topic for EU postal operators. And what I would like to, please go back. Yeah, thank you. So here I will be presenting these slides in behalf of Post Europe, and sometimes I will present also the slides, or I will provide you some messages in behalf of La Poste. So I will have a double role this afternoon for Post Europe and for La Poste. So the main purpose of my presentation is to provide you the challenges and the way forward as we can see as an EU postal operator. And I am sorry for that, but by saying EU postal operators, I of course include Norway and Switzerland. So I apologize to Norway and to Switzerland if it doesn't fit to them. But it's easier for me to just say EU postal operators. Next slide, please, Matthew. So here, as an EU postal operator, we are in a very specific situation because ICS2 is a project which has been defined by the European Commission, and it has started, in fact, this discussion have started, in fact, in 2018 with all stakeholders, which means IATA, UPU, WCO, and of course, EU postal operators. And what we have to keep in mind is that EU postal operators all are already part of the ICS2. So they are already making some data submissions since March 2021, especially when the release 1 of ICS2 has started to come into force. So on the screen, you can see the whole mechanism for ICS2. But what I wanted to show you is that, in fact, ICS2, as we can see in as a postal operator, is just look like it's an UPU global postal model look like, which means that since March 2021, EU postal operators already provide daily all the necessary messages to our customs authorities. What is new since October 2023 is, in fact, the involvement of airlines in this mechanism. So as you can see on the screen, the new requirements are between origin post and carriers and destination customs. That's the new requirements which have come into force since October 2023. But what I would like to stress out as well is that even if we have some, let's say, convergence between the UPU global postal model and the EU ICS2 requirements, there are some differences, some divergence between both data models. The first one is that ICS2 goes beyond the UPU global postal model, which means that ICS2 is not only about air security, it also deals with safety risk assessment. What does it mean in concrete? It means that airlines and the EU postal operators have also to deal with some scenarios where some risk assessment could lead to physical controls, physical checks upon arrival of goods in the EU destination territory. Okay. The second point of divergence between UPU and the EU postal model is that in terms of data elements, as it has been explained earlier about the HS code, for example, ICS2 requires more than the 7+1 data element, which means that, for example, here in ICS2, we need to get the HS code, especially when it concerns B2C and B2B shipments. So last point, but which is the most complicated issue, is related to the type of transit or transshipments. So all mail crossing the European Union territory. And for some basic reasons, we don't have concrete solutions at this stage, but I will present this point later on. So what we have to keep in mind here is that ICS2 and the UPU global postal model are more or less aligned, but there exists some divergence which could be complex to tackle. And as an EU postal operator, we are seated in two chairs, in the UPU side, of course, but also in the EU side, because we have to comply to ICS2 rules, because we are legally responsible for data submission. Next slide, please. So this slide is to show you, let's say, the different scenarios we could have to manage. And what is complex here is to determine who is responsible to provide data for the different scenarios. As I said earlier, EU postal operators are already in the ICS2 mechanism since March 2021. Which means that, for example, all mail imported in EU countries, the EU postal operators have to submit data, especially at item level data. But in terms of transit, what we have to know, to keep in mind is also that mail in transit, when the transit operator and the destination operator are both in the EU territory, those scenarios are already in the scope of ICS2 Release 1, which means that the destination EU postal operator have to comply with ICS2 rules by submitting data to the ICS2 shared trade interface. What we can also stress out is that 26 EU postal operators have decided to use IPC as the IT provider for the item level data submission. Only 3 EU postal operators have decided to use their bespoke solutions. Those 3 countries are Germany, Slovenia, and Italy. So those 3 countries have developed and are using their own system, IT systems, to provide data to the EU ICS2 system. So those 4 scenarios are already effective since March 2021. So the natural question is, what about airlines in this scheme? Because here I've just presented you the item level data submission process. But what about the consignment data level? Basically, what we have to keep in mind in the postal ICS2 model is that for airlines here, it is always in the country of introduction of goods in the European Union. Just let me take an example. If we have a scenario where shipments are coming from the United States, crossing France and transported to Germany as a final country, the airline who brings mail shipments to the European Union will have to provide the consignment level data in France and not in Germany. That's let's say the difference between the postal model in ICS2 and the cargo model in ICS2. Next slide. So what is new as of October 2023? Basically is when the transit country is in Europe and the destination country is outside from Europe. And here we can have two different situations. The first one is when transit mail, regardless if it is closed or open transit, but in such cases, and from a legal perspective, it is always up to the EU designated operator to provide item level data, and the airlines, of course, will have to provide the consignment level data. About the transshipments, from a legal point of view, from a legal perspective, from a legal approach, basically the regulation says that the airline is responsible to provide data, but we know that in the postal model it is a challenge that airlines provide data, and I will stress out later on, but there is some ongoing discussions between IATA, between UPU and IPC in order to find some technical and operational solution for the transshipments issue. Next slide, please. So, as an EU postal operator, what are the main challenges for this release 2? I would like to stress out three different challenges. The first one is about the data quality. As I said, we already provide item level data since March 2021. And we know that some data elements are very difficult to get from non-EU postal operators. And we have identified some specific data elements. For example, the consignors or the consignees' names and addresses are still issues today. But as I explained in my introduction, with Release 2, we have also some new data elements. And we already know that providing these data elements by non-EU postal operators could be a challenge for Release 2. Among these new data elements, there are, of course, the 6-digit HS code, but not only, we have also the AORI number, we have also the type of person. These three different data elements are required to non-EU postal operators, and it could be a challenge. So what we have foreseen as EU postal operators is to work very closely with IPC in order to set up some fallback scenarios where the non-EU postal operators would not be able to provide these data elements. And for example, for the HS code, we have decided with IPC or some EU postal operators have decided to use a module developed by IPC in order to find out the right HS code in case of the non-EU postal operators have not provided this data element. The second point of challenge, second level of challenge, is of course the treatment of reinforced messages. What we have observed today is that, let's say, around 80 or 90% of messages provided to the European Commission receive a referral message within 2 hours. Of course, these figures has to be improved time after time, and IPC and UPU are working hard on that to improve the current system. But what we have also identified is that sometimes we have some IT outages, and in this case, we cannot do anything about these IT outages. We can just inform non-EU postal operators, and themselves could inform the airline that an IT outage is currently ongoing, and unfortunately, we are not able to provide any timeline in this outage resolution. And that's maybe the most complicated part of this challenge. The last point is about the divergence between ICS2 and the UPU global postal model. As I explained, ICS2, it's not only about air security. As an EU postal operators, I have also to provide, and airlines also. Airlines have, and EU postal operators have to provide a couple of messages upon arrival of goods in our country, and especially in our facilities. Which means that additional controls, physical controls, could be triggered by EU customs. And here, what is complex is to determine when and the reason why EU customs have triggered such controls. And what we have also to keep in mind is ICS2 is just a part of the whole EU regulation landscape. Why I'm saying that is that today, if EU postal operators are not able to comply with ICS2 rules, it means concretely that we cannot clear goods and we cannot deliver goods. We are not authorized to deliver goods to the final consignee. So items could be stored in our warehouses and for some physical checks or for some additional controls. As EU postal operators, we have also identified an issue regarding return mail. Return mail, which means that mail first sent to a non-EU country, and then they are coming back to the EU territory. And for this return mail, but also for missent items, we have to provide an ICS2 declaration, which represents basically an issue because we don't have data from non-EU postal operators for those kind of shipments. Next slide, please. So now what we are observing as an EU postal operators is a major issue. It's a major issue for transit and transshipments in the European Union. Why? Because basically there is a divergence between UPU acts and the EU ICS2 rules. And for the moment, transit and transshipments are not included in the EAD global postal model. As Jan explained in the introduction, ICS2 Release 2 requires data for transit and for transshipment, which means that the transit operator, the EU postal transit operator, or the airline who is making the transshipments in the EU are legally responsible to provide data for transit or transshipment. And here we have a transitional period which has started as of October 2nd and until April 1st, 2024, to find solutions, concrete solutions, operational solutions, and IT solutions to get compliant for 90% of postal shipments by April 2024. And the remaining 10% have a deadline until January 1st, 2025. And once again, here, this postponement only concerns transit and transshipment. So what remains to be done to be able to meet the deadlines? And that will be my conclusion word. As an EU postal operators, we are, of course, we need a strong cooperation, between IATA, UPU, and IPC to find the technical solutions to tackle the transit and transshipments issues. EU postal operators will get in touch with non-EU postal operators to adapt their service level agreements for the transit services. but also we need to work with IPC and UPU in order to know whether we need to update or upgrade the current data sharing agreements. And of course, as an EU postal operators, we will continue to work with UPU and IPC, but also within UPU bodies on the potential adaptation of the legal framework and to make, let's say, a convergence between UPU, Global Postal Model, and ICS2 requirements. That's all from my side. Thank you very much, Matthew. And of course, if you need some clarity about the EU vision of ICS2, I will be more than pleased to provide you some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you very much for very detailed presentation. And now let's go to non-EU ICS2 postal operators. And we have Carlos from Brazil Post. So, Carlos.
Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. You better?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Can you change the slides for me, please? No, please go back one, but you have the control, please. Sorry. So let's start. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here, IATA and UPU. I'm the Regional Project Security Manager of UPU, responsible for Latin America, and Project Manager of EAD and security issues in the Brazilian Post. And my objective for today is to present how has been our experience in the ICS2 implementation since last year until the few outcomes of 2 of October. Next slide, please. Here we have our agenda, which I described with a brief introduction, some measures, introduction in our preparation phase, what worked better and didn't work as well, a kind of a summary analysis of it, ICS2 release 2, especially basic KPIs that we identify as important, challenge and observations, lessons learned, and the last one and extremely important, expected advantage of the mode. Next slide, please. Now, let's try to connect the ACT and EAD issues, where some posts started requiring the transmission of some electronic message from January 2021, especially we're talking about for item containing goods, item at message, which means customs electronic declaration. And then countries around the world have been put in place internal legislations and requirements for EAD. You can say several examples: Brazil, United States, Russia, Australia, and our focus today will be about ICS2. We can talk a little bit about release 1, release 2, and the last measures from October. Can you advance a little bit? One more step, Matthew, please. Matthew, please. Can you,
Yeah,
okay.
do you want me to?
Oh, sorry. Okay, that's it. Now let's put all of these elements in a timeline, align with our measures introduced since last year until the last outcomes. Everything started in April and July of last year, which was a phase we could update our system. Without all PTC support, it would be extremely difficult. I thank you, PTC and all colleagues that helped us on this, update our IPS. In August, we started a pilot project with Lufthansa, trying to start monitoring the carded message, including data quality, timelines, and the beginning of AF flag measures. In December, we started AF flag in production with Lufthansa and then expanded for the carriers from Europe. January, in production, 100% of carriers regarding air flag. February, the first pilot, end of the month regarding exchange in production. I didn't have a response, especially with some EU countries part of WASP region, saying about Spain and Portugal. And then the next month update again our CDS and IPS. Why I'm saying this? Because without the correctly version of the UPU system will not be possible to ensure 100% of rules are in compliance with ICS2. In August, after our regional workshop, we received a notice that from UPU that PTC and IPC had opened all ED channels to transmit item reference for the whole country in the world. It increased our number of Portugal, Spain, and one or two more to 25, 26 EU countries of the total 27 plus Switzerland and Norway. And in October, for 2 months October, we have almost 3 weeks, the full model of ICS2 Release 2, including the carrier perspective, our perspective, and we can now put in place the whole rules started in the ops exchange in our orange, going for the carriers and ICS2 answer. Next slide, please. So now let's establish some difference of perspective of which one involved in more technical aspects. So let's talk the first one, non-EU operators. What are our prerequisites? First one, EAD status check on. Why? It's important to ensure 100% of item message for item containing goods, and that you will not have any referral pending, any item reference, request for information, request for screening, or any other message without an answer of our side. Configure our AF flag in our systems associated with the route and the a postal document CN70, but we are talking about CSD, Consignment Security Declaration, which is a document with more details related with the security for that specific consignment. Configure for the version 2.1 of Cardit, and start exchanging item reference and have response, which that countries that are available to do it. And advance a little bit more, Matthew, probably then, yes. And of EU perspective, the basic prerequisites to be exchange item reference to have a response with non-EU countries. And the last one, the carrier, which, as Christopher mentioned, it was a new element in our global model. Origin, carried, and destination need at least to exchange coordinate transit, especially the version 2.1. Here we have some more details. I will mention it in more advance. Next slide, please. Now, basically preparation summary of our journey during the last month. First step, UPU solutions. It's important to bear in mind, update the system and in our case, IPS, CDS, and PNG to ensure that the flow will work perfectly well. Advanced data is important to generate and transmit when the items is posted. Now, I'm saying that it's important to transmit as soon as possible. Will not be recommended to transmit item message after EMC event, as we used to do a few years ago, or maybe after ICS2. Configure AF flag in the coded message, associate it with the correspondent route and CSD. Configure EAD check. It's extremely important to ensure that the model will have all requirements in compliance. Configure the ADI exchange item headers have response with the in compliance with the respective standard M53 and M54. One more, Matthew, please. Manage the pending helpers. Here, it's a key point of the model. We need some training, need some study, and to focus and establish some protocols, guide, and training the all operational team involved. Choose customs and EDI capability carrier for a pilot. It's important to put some energy in the pilot, lesson learning, best practice, and then we can move for the other one in production. Carry out that pilot test, analyze the first outcomes, and optimize the process for the next involved. And then we could plan to move to production. Next slide. Next slide, please. Now, one slide dedicated to AF flag. Here we have in the AF flag, it was some confusion that for one hand of the carriers and on other hand of the non-EU postal operators. What does it mean, this discarded? So it means that all items in that consignment, in that receptacle, has item at message and no pending referral as a request item happens without any analysis. Basically, means it that all applicable regulations are met for the full consignment. And for it, we have basically 4 elements in the credit that need to be throughout in the EDA message. Without these, we will be not compliance in our UPU indicators and will not be possible to the carrier scan our receptacle without any pending. Here is just one example that shows that AF flag will be included in one line in the coded message, but it means that all receptacles of all items of that receptacles has item at message and no pending header. Next slide, please. After that first moment, that first phase, maybe around the beginning of the year, we were possible to do some kind of analysis. What worked well? First step, first point, technical operation support with PTC of UPU. Then the cooperation with carrier customs. In our case, we're more related with Portugal, Spain, and Lufthansa as the European carrier. Advanced data, generate and transmit item as soon as possible, configure the whole UPU system. One extremely important point, data quality analysis. It means that now we look for more in details and try to develop some strategies to improve our level of data quality, especially quality and item to ensure that we have the less chance to receive some item headers because of data quality and because of some poor data or something incomplete. And here the status check. Without these, it wasn't possible to ensure that that item will be item at message and no header open. Improve the percentage of coded message to try to reach 100% of it, as the colleagues from the carriers said. And on the other hand, we have some points that didn't work as well. The first is regarding to UPU system. delay in the upgrade of that solution will not be possible to ensure the whole model working in perfect conditions. Not establishing solid monitoring in some of our routines. It means that we need to check the quality, we need to check some issues and try to improve as soon as possible each item or each point that need to be covered. Last one, when we not work in harmony with carrier customs, it means we need a viability to talk, to put the issues in the table, try to develop some strategy and think out of the box, looking for or expecting the same objective on that journey. Next slide, please. No, now we are going directly for ICS2, actually from 2 of October now, means 2 or 3 weeks ago. Affected flows, goods destinated to EU, means 27 European member states, plus Switzerland, Norway, go passing EU and destinated outside of EU, especially I'm talking about open transit, and not include transshipment and closed transit. So this is our scope for 2 of October. As Christopher mentioned, some of them, especially closed transit, have a window to improve until the beginning of 2024. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Here, let's start talking about the KPIs. And I'm in my point of view, is the base, and the result is aligned with the UPU data showed in the beginning of our webinar. Here, the idea is to show that the time between transmission of item and the reception of item reference, we have improved that number. In the August, we reached 75% in less than 16 hours. We can see in our graph, in our clock, that this number is. And on the left, we have the analytic numbers of each EU postal operator. We can see that there is some more advanced regarding of the last. It means that it started with the test and the pilot since the beginning. But next slide, please. We finally go to the September, more recently data. We can see a positive tendency. The number increased 76 to 89, almost 9%, with the same performance. It is looked at, the number is aligned with the Christopher show for us, that 9% has with responsible, and here is the total time between the transmission, then the information arrives, and for the you needs to transmit it to ICS2, receive the answer, and return it for us. So as I think 16 hours more, you have 20% less than 4 hours. It's an acceptable number, and it avoids some operational impacts, especially in the operation side. Next slide, please. So, challenge and observation. The point 1, it was noted that continuous improve of data quality, it's a key element to avoid a possibility to receive an item reference because of missing some information or not compliance. So more quality, less chance to receive an item reference. This is the rule. Second, writing the manual or guide to how to manage the reference. I noticed including my region. It's not easy sometimes to understand the message and the respective code list, and more important, the action. We receive a code, we have the code list of the standard, but what we need to do of that item to going ahead with it. Important point. Operational training need to be continuously. It means all the time review documents, capacity building to invest on that point with the colleague. Now, point 4 is more regarding with open transit. I noticed that some countries, especially in Europe, are asking or requiring some new time to adjust their own system to receive custom declaration of transit, for example. And then it's important to review that. The bilateral agreement we are talking about Brazil side, we are trying to do this with them. Point 4, operational planning in our airport, especially the relation between CODIT and RESD 74, it means the received. Why I'm saying this? Because in the past we are used to close our consignment just few minutes or few hours after the carriers team, operational carriers team, arrived in our unit. And then what was the result? When the carrier scanned the receptacle, means that no carded for that no carded message. Why? Because it's necessary to have a time between those consignments, we finish the service, then the information will go to UPU, and then the carrier will have the access and translate to their own system. I observed that the beginning of the process, maybe it can take some 3 or 4 hours to this whole process. So we need to adjust our process to close consignment in advance and planning that collection, that handover by carrier, align with this timeline to avoid any operational impacts, especially in the airport. Number 6, deal with multiple item heifer message. With the sequence, we noted that we receive one message and then another one and then another one, and then it means after one assessment completed, one new message, and this caused some confusion. We need to adjust our training and people to avoid this. So this is one more challenge. And especially in the point 6, I would like to mention that we notice we are not receiving our request for information, request for screening, and do not load. And I don't know if it was our quality is in a basic level or in a sector level, or we still beginning this process. So I noticed that we receive no item hampers of these three messages: request for information, request for screening, and do not load message. The last point, I have some features that I not include in that presentation. It's one interest point. Maybe some colleague may ask, can you ensure that 100% of your item message are receiving item helper message? It's a good question. I discussed it with UPU, and in August we reached 82% of it, means 18% without item happiness. And in September, we moved to 95%. So it means that we are improving positive tendency. We'll reach 100% of item happiness for all item message very soon. Maybe in October, the number could go to 100%. Next slide, please. Now, expectation regarding the stakeholders. Here, the point is that collaboration is the key, and we need carrying customs readiness and availability, DO readiness, especially after 2 of October, Technical cooperation among the post operator, it means share best practice, lesson learned, discuss it maybe regionally because they have the same issues, face the same situation, same difficulties, same problems, and capacity building. Maybe can do it locally, regionally with UPU support, and we can have some local initiatives to discuss with our countries that are part of the region. Next slide, please. Lessons learned, just a summary of all of we already have mentioned today. Operational, we have two main points, operation and technical. Operation, the use of ED status check, the improve of coded message, the air flag, the continuing improving of data quality, strategy and training, and how to deal with the referrals to avoid any operational impacts. At the same time, operational plan regarding the collecting of the carriers in our case, in the airport. Of technical, future upgrades in the UPU system, basic knowledge of the standard, continue handling business scenario with how to deal with no assessment complete answer, no cadre. It's important to develop a strategy on it, introduce data quality and check the system to ensure that our data quality will have a good level. Next slide, please. Now, one extremely important point, our expected advantage. Point one, improve data quality. Just because of ICS2, we are trying to improve our data quality, and we can include even the hardware message too. Improve security. It meets the needs of international regulator and government as ICS2. Reduce delay by improving efficiency on that transportation customs clearance process in the EU countries. Reduce B-return items for not having item. It was something that we suffer in the release 1. Sometimes the item doesn't hadn't the message, and then it caused some return items. It was an issue of 2021. We are not facing it anymore. And better service, improving visibility for the customs, for the carriers, and it's a customer peace of mind of it. Next slide, please. I think is the last one. Matthew, next slide, please. Oh, the next slide. I'd like to say thank you for the participants, that huge number, almost 250 participants, the PTC, especially Montevideo team and board team, the UPU, the whole team of supply chain, Spain and Portugal for our cooperation, technical cooperation, and Lufthansa and Air France to we reach that level to share that experience. And thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Carlos. And next presenter, the speaker will be EU Commission. And I would like to give the floor to Clement. So, Clement.
Hello, Matthew and the colleagues and participants. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. You can just continue on clicking the slides as with the previous speakers. First, I would like to thank you for the invitation to this webinar. Indeed, it's very also useful and insightful and pedagogical for Digitaxis European Commission to see the progress that has been made, significant progress that has been made towards the October date of application of release 2 by all players, so non-designated, non-EU designated operators, air carriers, and EU operators. And my presentation here, as already announced, will be a bit diving in more into the what is expected post 2nd October when the release 2 of ICS2 became applicable. already mentioned by the previous speaker, by Christoph, and also by Jan, that this, in particular, the flows on the transit and the transshipments have to be handled in a way that we do not introduce the disruption to the supply chains, to the postal network, and to have a viable and workable time frame to have anyway, in any way, these requirements that are already applicable by law as from October 2nd, implemented in the shortest possible time in the next coming months. So my presentation will be in this regard, to go a bit more in the clarifications of these aspects, but maybe also touching upon on some clarifications which might help, because there were certain also questions raised also by Christoph in earlier presentation on his side. So before going into the transshipment and transit flows, I would just like to give an explanation of our, say, the overview of what the ICS2 really is aiming towards. So first of all, it is a system that supports an overall reform of the customs EU, Switzerland, Norway, because it's a European customs security regime, to support overall reform in ensuring that we have a strengthened security and safety of the supply chains, and of course security and safety of our internal markets. So that's why we have this two-pronged scope to the ICS2 program in terms of the risk management, in terms of why we are setting these requirements in place. So first, so just to be very clear, the ICS2 here is, not only to cover the postal flows, but it is a global program that concerns all flows of the goods entering into the EU, irrespective whether destined as a final destination in the European security area, or the goods are going only to enter with the final destination outside the security area. So it covers globally all flows, all goods, all transport sectors and business models, including the postal. And for the postal, we have adopted the approach where we have developed a system that is aligned to the global postal model, as already explained by Christoph. But because of this additional layer where we have the border security aspect, the ICS2 in terms of requirements has additional elements of the obligations. So, but on the first layer, it is about, of course, providing the data as soon as possible before the goods are being loaded on the aircraft. We talk about the air traffic in a third country that allows a layered security regime from the perspective of stopping, identifying, detecting the scenario of bomb in the box. So it is purely air cargo and mail security regime for these preloading aspects. And the program is aligned with the ICAO-WCO preloading advanced cargo information standards. And as I said, it's focusing on purely air cargo and mail security threats. We, in terms of a data demand, is based on the minimum data set, which is the basically equivalent to the EAD, without the information on the transport vectors. So without the data requirements do not call for information from the air carriers at this stage. And yeah, as I mentioned, it's about all goods that are transported by aircraft to the EU, including those goods that will be finally transported out of the EU and the security regime, so including Switzerland, Norway. And we have a pre-arrival risk analysis. So there, the customs is using the data, which adds to the EAD or the PLASI additional data requirements, including HS 6-digit commodity code, but also the transport-related information, so that the customs can know, assess already in advance of arrival when the aircraft arrives where the risks are and how to be controlled. And these security and safety risks are broader. It's not about finding explosives in the supply chain, but it's about protecting the international supply chains in our internal market. So we talk about serious and relevant risks in the area of security safety, like I mentioned in the presentation, like narcotics, weapons, environmental crime, or dangerous fakes, as just an example of the variety of the risks which customs is focusing on our external borders. So that's the scope of the program and why we are implementing the ICS2 requirements from the EU perspective. And Matthew, maybe you can go to the next slide. So now looking into the ICS2 Release 2 responsibilities point of view. So Release 2 of the requirements is legally applicable as from October 2nd, 2023. So from 2 weeks ago. And in terms of responsibilities, when it comes to the postal flows, I would like to clarify that for the postal items or the goods that are in the postal items and are transported by air and are destined to or are transiting, be it open or closed transit, the European customs area, the responsibility lies on the involved EU, Switzerland, Norway postal operators to obtain the item level electronic advance data for the entry summary declaration filings from the origin postal operators in accordance with the global postal model. When it comes to the postal flows and transported by air, and these goods are transshipped through the European Customs Security Area, and needs to be, of course, covered by the entry summary declarations, the responsibility lies on the involved origin designated operator and air carrier, which they need to agree about the entry summary declaration filing mechanism. And that, in a way, clarify or answer also a question mark that Christoph have put in his presentation. And would like to just to give you, maybe I'll just put it in the chat, a reference to a regulation which actually clarifies this legal responsibilities. So it's implementing regulation of EU 2023 of 3. So it's a 3 number 3 of 14 December. And it's about Article 113A, paragraph 4. So I would just like to, in a way, guide colleagues and the participants to this regulation and to this particular aspect of the responsibility when it comes to transshipment. Obviously the air carriers also need to obtain the CARDIT, which we have extensively now discussed, and we see very good, I would say a high level of compliance and the implementation already on this side, because this CARDIT data is necessary for the carriers to transform it into the postal master able bill entry summary declaration filing. So meaning to comply on their side, to present or to send to the customs the data of the consignments, receptacles that they are about to carry into the EU security area. Just to sum up, that means that all postal flows as from October 2nd, in principle, needs to be covered by the ENS. But, however, when it comes to, and then I'll go to the next slide, when it comes to the goods which are in a transit and transshipment flows, we acknowledge from the EU Commission side that the air carriers and EU postal operators and air carriers in all conjunction with the non-EU postal operators are not yet in a position to submit the necessary entry summary declaration data. So meaning EAD pure, which is the preloading, or full for all the goods that are entering. So affected flows are that we still have a certain proportion of the goods that are not covered by the entry summary declaration, for which the legislation has been made compulsory already in Release 1, and these are the goods destined to the European security area. And then we have these flows or segments of the goods that are passing through the EU secure customs security area, be it in the open or closed transit, and the goods in transshipment. So with regards to these flows, and take into account that there is a level of complexity from a legal point of view, if we talk about EU international convention, not from the EU regulatory regime, which is very clear in terms of these requirements. From the perspective of the operational technical issues that still hinder the ability of the operators to comply with these requirements, we have presented from the Commission side the approach in 2020 on the 21st of March, so 3 weeks ago, which is pragmatic, and it's a common approach that affects all the stakeholders, so the customs authorities on one side and the operators. The approach that basically allows for a phase-in enforcement of the new rules, which means that the authorities, the customs authorities, are not going to impose sanctions and penalties for the fact that the data will not be there for these flows for a specific time period. But in all of that, obviously, this is to avoid the disruption to the international flows. But in order to that, this phased-in enforcement can really work and can be implemented in a common way. We needed to define the time period, during which or within which the operators would establish necessary, I would say, mechanisms, be it from the legal or contractual point of view, the data sharing agreements and IT solutions, to comply with these obligations. And next slide, please. So, in this regard, when we talk about the phased-in enforcement, and we talk about the transit and transshipment services, we have established a reporting and monitoring mechanism, which basically calls for individual operators to provide the information on a bi-weekly basis to the European Commission, and to be then shared with the customs authorities on the progress regarding the compliance to the ICS2 Release 2. So basically, each EU postal operator or each individual air carrier that is affected with these flows and is not compliant would need to follow certain milestones, and we need to work out the different, I would say, open issues in a way to be able to comply. So we have three main I would say deliverables. First is deliverable is about, and precondition, of course, to be able to share or to be able to send the data to the customers, is that the operators need to reach the data sharing or commercial agreements with each other. So that is the milestone for which we have established a end date on the 22nd of January 2024. In parallel, the operators we also will need to engage if there is any, of course, there will be very likely IT solution implications, both on the back-end side between the operators and also vis-a-vis the ICS2 connections, so that this IT solution or adaptation or updates when it comes to the ICS2 connections will be implemented by 4th of March 2024. And then we come to the overall implementation, which we have cut into two segments. First is by 1st of April 24. On the individual operators, I would say, basis, there should be 90% coverage, either of a transit, open and closed transit flows or transshipments. And by 1st of January at the latest, 100% coverage of the flows. We are giving extra time, or there is an extra time given to this 10% because we need to we do understand there need to be in somehow there needs to be absorption of flows from, in particular, those designated operators from third countries, which will need more time, in particular from, for example, least developed countries. So what are essentials here in terms of reaching these implementation milestones is that we see, and we are really glad to have this opportunity to speak in front of 250 colleagues. We trust that there are also a lot of origin postal operators, non-EU postal operators at the meeting, that to raise this criticality of the role of the origin postal operators and the collaboration with the air carriers and with the designated operators in the EU, Switzerland, Norway, to work out the solutions from the data sharing perspective and from the agreements point of view, contractual point of view, and from the perspective of the IT solutions. We do believe that this is in the interest of all actors in the overall ecosystem, and to work under the UPU umbrella, which provides for such framework to be established between the operators. And we also do recognize, and we are very glad to have very active role and support of the UPU International Bureau to facilitate these arrangements, because obviously it is an interest of the global postal network to have access to all transport and logistic routes. Next slide. Yeah, these are, maybe I will really not linger here on the details of the reporting, but here is really just to take away, I would say, from this webinar, more details in terms of what are reporting, I would say, elements. Here I focused on the transshipment part because we have here, in particular, the the connection between the air carriers and the origin post operators, which really need to work together on the solutions. So I think we will not explain further what I did already in a summary, but we have three segments. We have the data sharing agreements, and here I would say the main milestones that we are commonly monitoring on that respect. Then we have the in the next slide, the reporting in terms of development of the IT solution. Matthew, if you put slide further. So these are the deadlines for the IT solution development, and as you see, as an ultimate date for the implementation is the 4th of March, and then we have a last segment or deliverables is the actual implementation of the filings for the transshipments compliance, where we have this recognition of flows that need to be covered by 1st of April, which is 90% on an individual carrier level, and the rest of it by January 1st at the latest, 2025. And I think, just a bit of a sum up here. I think this is going to be the last slide. The first, is that phased-in period should be finished in general by the 1st of April. While vast majority of flows should be covered. What is important is that those flows for which we already have obligations or requirements in the phase 1 of ICS2, which is the European security area destined flows, we do observe that they are not yet covered as October 2nd yet. So the approach in terms of enforcement and potential actions by the member states authorities for non-compliance is that by the 1st of April, all these flows should be 100%, and after that, if not the case, then of course the member states have under their national competences the right to impose the penalties or sanctions. And then, for these remaining flows on 10%, we have this approach until January 1st, 25, and that, the point of the first action of first milestone is that we have our first reporting deadline on the 30th of October this year, so in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Clement. And so before passing back to the closing section, we have one Q&A question in the Q&A box. So for EU, the question is, could you please confirm my understanding is that item level data for closed transits only, not open transit, non-EU to EU and non-EU, has been deferred by the EU for now, so that no item level submission is required for this to the EU closed transit operator for now. Thanks. So would Clement help to answer this question in the Q&A?
Can you just try to guide me where this question is in the chat box, because I'm trying to
In
find
the Q&A box. Q&A box.
It's if I
in
may,
the Q&A.
Clement,
Okay,
it's more or less the
like
same.
that.
It's more or less the
Okay,
same question as Air Serbia raised during the previous DigiTaxud meeting in the chat, because Air Serbia is one of the carriers transporting mail between two EU destinations, but with a transit in non-EU countries. So they have a problem that they don't have ultimate messages from designated operators because it's mail between two EU destinations. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing is, I think these are two different cases, yeah, or scenarios. Going back to Array question regarding the closed transit, indeed, we are, so the phase-in enforcement basically recognizes that the electronic advanced data is not yet available to the designated operators within the European security zone. And for that reason, necessary data sharing arrangements and the technical solutions for the implementation of closed transit needs to happen in the coming months. So now at the moment, there is a recognition that the data on the item level is not happening, and it will not be, I would say, enforced by the customs authorities in terms of non-compliance. So we have this, program until the April 1st for the 90% of closed transit, and the rest 10% by the January 1st, 2025. But when it comes to the issue that you mentioned, Jan, with regards to Air Serbia, where you have the origin, or say the departing country is the EU operator, and the final destination is the EU, that actually already falls under the phase 1 requirements, because it is a situation under the EU regulations for the ICS2 or ENS, is where the goods, when they leave, if they you have a situation when the goods leave the EU territory or customs security area into the third country and they are stopping there, then they're then destined into the EU, then you have the rule of the destination, which is already phase 1. So basically, in that regard, we know that there are certain implementation issues, and we have also been, in a way, alerted by some colleagues from customs neighboring Serbia, that this is a matter that we need to look into. In particular, I think that there is an issue with the IT service provider, because the data, in a way, should be already provided by, in this case, IPC. If you have, like, for example, postal operators from Greece sending to Croatia, but stop is in Serbia, that IT map that is generated in Greece should be in a way converted by the IT provider into the ENS and sent to Croatia, because it's leaving the EU postal EU security area. Yeah, so that's, I think, on the QA side.
Yeah, thank you, Clement. So I'm a little bit concerned about the time. So every question in the Q&A box will follow up after the webinar. So I will give the floor to Jan and as a closing, and we will do the closing. So floor is yours, Jan. Thank you, Clement.
Thank you very much. So we try to answer some questions in the chat. So I'd like just to thanks to all speakers first, and also to all participants for very interesting informations. I'd like just to mention that I really appreciate very informative presentations, and in many of recommendations or challenges mentioned by speakers, we are already working. For example, when Natalia from Swiss mentioned visibility and data quality, I immediately offered participation in the compliance project. Immediately we received requests from some carriers, so it's great. We will follow up. I really appreciate the work of all IT suppliers because, as mentioned by Stephanie from United, it was really extremely important and not easy because there is still a lot of challenges. I mentioned, or she mentioned, missing addresses for IMPC codes. We are working on that. We improve it. It's not perfect, but nobody is perfect. And I think that I would really appreciate also pragmatic approach of European Commission, as I mentioned at the beginning, because even if it did a great steps or job, there is still a lot of challenges, especially in the legal area and technical tools area. But as was mentioned by Christoph, we continue in our work and our discussion. In 2 weeks, we should discuss in the POC, Postal Operational Council, some amendments to the UPU Convention regulations to progress in some areas and to help to meet some of these requirements. I would like to encourage all of you to contact us if you have any problem, because we really try to take lessons learned from the last few days after October 2nd, and we are trying to improve and answer all your emails. For example, I saw in one of the presentations that, or in the chat, that there are no RFI or RFS coming. On one side, we could be happy because it means that there is no need for that, and all data provided in ITMAT are correct and enough for filing. On the other side, of course, we need to get a practice. That's the reason why we need more time to see how to handle some RFI, RFS messages or what to do with some special scenarios. I'd like to thanks also to both IATA-UPU Contact Committee co-chairs, Billy Roach from American Airlines and Mette Boysen from PostNord, or representing Sweden, because they really do a great job, and I hope that we will continue in our fruitful discussion also in 10 days during the next or upcoming IATA-UPU Contact Committee. I hope that based on your feedback after the webinar, we will get maybe some ideas for some interesting topics for you, because we will not focus on ICS2 only forever. We would like to find another new topics, and that's the reason why we count also on you, on your feedback and recommendations. Thank you very much, Matthew, for arranging this and managing this webinar, and I'm giving back floor to you.
Thank you, Jan. So Sam here. Once again, thank you everyone who participated in this webinar and also the speaker. We have altogether 270 participants in this webinar in the past 2 hours. So that means that we are really focused on talking about how to be safe, be secure, and also be sustainable for the aviation, cargo, and mail industry. Why we focus on so many topics seems quite complicated. The regulatory requirement is, please remember, we are doing something is to make sure that the aviation, the mail, and cargo is safe for transport. So this is what we aim at from IATA perspective. And After this webinar, all the presentation materials, the videos will be uploaded in our IATA webpage and also the UPU website. And the last thing is that you will receive a survey email that just take a few minutes to complete the survey, and your feedback is really important for us to make it better for the next IATA-UPU contact committee and the webinar as well. So once again, thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye-bye.